Welcome to On the Edge with April Mahoney Brains. Here, this is the spot where the conversation is pointed, the guests are sharp, and the responses are never dull. Welcome home, Brains. There's only one requirement to hang out on the edge, is that you open your big brain and close your small mind. Did you bring your thinking caps? It's time to put them on, because the conversation starts now. Well, I love it. I love it. So welcome to On the Edge with April Mahoney Brains. Today we have returning to the show my dear friend Gail Dixon. Gail is, I'm telling you, if you're trying to be an orator and a speaker and you want to stay on the cutting edge of what is, on everybody's palate right now, let's talk about the Heart's Voice movement. She is on a crusade to help people use their language in a better way for speaking and for good. We can spit some vitriol with that tongue. I know I've been there too. But you do yourself a disservice. You really do. We're going to talk a little bit about swearing and cussing too. I was somewhere and these women, I'm telling you, they were no ladies. That diminishes what you're trying to portray. There's a plethora of words that you could use to explain, to get your point across. But also the most important thing, and I think Gail will attest to this, is to be a good listener and to be heard. It's not always this, because you could miss something. So revisit with my brains and tell them just how you show up in the world, Queen.
All right, I will. So I am really on a mission to get people to use the sacred power of language and listening to bring about good and to heal the world. I think the world is wounded right now, and we're operating in a space of pain, collective pain, and that pain shows up in anger and hatred. It shows up in violence. It shows up in poverty and lack and disconnection and depression and sadness and a scarcity model. It shows up in all kinds of ways. But what it really means is we haven't used the one thing that God gave us as a sacred gift, which is language, to connect with each other in love, to create that whole community, that whole world of love. And so I'm on a mission to change the tone of collective speech, the general kind of run of the mill.
Right.
How do we encounter speech, but also to get a critical mass of people who commit themselves to using language in powerful ways and to listen.
You don't have to sell me. I'm all in. I'm with
you. All right. And to listen with the heart. One of the things I say, April, in the Heart's Voice movement is that speaking from the heart is an act of courage. Listening with the heart is an act of love. And so I think that we can get into habits of using language for other than those kinds of purposes. We can speak in voices that aren't authentic to our own inner truth and inner knowing or our own connection with source. We can speak in ways that divide and destroy rather than create and connect. And we have to be intentional.
We have to pause. Sometimes we have to take a breath and process it. It's how you process things. I know somebody last night ripped into me. We were in a public meeting and I was voicing my opinion and I kept my voice tone the same. And he got all reared up and his chest all puffed out. And I just calmly asked him, okay, can we use our inside voices? I didn't change my voice inflection, my mood, anything, because again, I was managing the situation. But words are so powerful. You look at
absolutely
children when you speak cruelly to them, or you swear at them, or you yell at them. That is more damaging, I think, sometimes than corporal punishment and spanking them.
Oh, absolutely.
How you
It,
diminish your partner and you say you're not worthy or you're nothing or you're not good enough or, all those type of things. But when you
right.
speak with the love language, and I'm so fortunate that I have an amazing husband and mother that talk to me that way,
Mhm.
it really changes your perspective. And when someone comes to you off kilter, you rectify that right away because you say,
Exactly.
this is not right. There's something wrong about this.
Right. And to do what you did, which is say, wait a minute, I'm not going to match anger with anger. I'm going to counter anger with love and gentleness. And I'm going to set the standard and have people match me in this positive place rather than me move to matching them in a negative place. And it requires attention. It's really easy. It's really easy to get caught up, in gossip, to get caught up in worry, to get caught up in all kinds of things that make us view the world in a negative way. And our souls, our very spirits, listen to and take
Yeah.
in what we say.
Yes, ma'am.
And if we start our day and wake up with the world and come at it with a positive frame and say, I'm grateful, I intend to do good, I'm living in love, there's no guarantee that something out of the way might not happen to us. But I promise you that our day will be better than if we wake up mad at the world or on the wrong side of the bed.
So, Gail, what is this really about? Is it about control? Is it about influence? Is it about posturing and bolstering and really trying to pontificate, make yourself important? Because that all correlates back to being insecure and
Mhm.
insignificant. It doesn't make you powerful, I don't think.
No, I don't think so either, April. But I think that what happens is that we do tend to match what's around us.
Mm,
And so when there's a critical mass of people speaking and behaving and acting and relating to others in that negative space, sometimes it's easier to be in that negative space than to counter it, which is why I started this movement. Because I know it's going to take a critical mass of people who are absolutely intentional and committed to using language in this loving way and to using listening in this loving way for us to shift the pendulum, for us to shift the direction and the tone of the world. And I do think that all of that negativity really comes from a place of fear or a place of unworthiness, people feeling unworthy, and from a scarcity model.
yep.
If people believe that there is only so much power, so much money, so much food, so much status,
Mm-hmm.
so much connection, and they operate out of fear that they are not worthy,
Mm.
we put ourselves in a paradigm that is very, very native to the Western world, which is we live in a win-lose world.
Right. But you know what, Gail? You've always been a powerful orator. That's been your gift and training people to speak. But now, when I feel people are in this echo chamber
Mhm.
and they reverberate negativity, instead of letting it bounce off of you, instead of you being a critical thinker and saying, how does this serve me? How does this serve mankind, womankind? Uh, how is this going to be an influence? It's like swearing. I did a whole show on it, one of my top rated shows. You go in and you attack someone. The first thing I do is I shut you down. I don't even listen to it because you feel that aggression.
Mhm.
I want a conversation. I want to be heard. And hearing and listening are two totally different skills.
Ooh, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So, how does a person that's been living in this world of negativity change that neuro linguistic programming, change that conversation that they have, and all those little sugar plums dancing in their head? How do they get a grip on themselves to incorporate this philosophy of a heart centered love language?
I I would say that the first thing to do is to get quiet.
Mm,
Get quiet and
yes,
go
ma'am.
inside yourself.
Yes, ma'am.
Because so long as you are sitting in the echo chamber with all those outside negative voices reverberating, it's hard for you to catch your own internal vibration. That's the vibration of love.
Mm, mm, mm.
And there's that saying out there that you're the sum total of the 5 people you spend most time with.
Yep.
So the first person you need to spend good quality time with is yourself. Then find someone who is trustworthy, who's also vibrating at that love and care vibration,
That's right. That frequency. That
right?
frequency. It's like a
Be in
radio.
that,
It's like a radio brains. I don't know how old you guys are. You listen to everything on
right?
MP3 now.
You
But it used to be you had to tune in. You that's
tune into that frequency. And for many people, it's also tuning into source. It's
yes.
also tuning into a higher power, whatever you call that. I have friends who refer to that higher power as Gus, God, universe, spirit.
Oh, that's
I love that because it just encompasses all the possible faith approaches. But something beyond ourselves, some source that is that first whispered that little tidbit of love into our hearts, that little peace.
when you read your religious texts, that is one of the primary things that every religion says. It's about love.
Mhm.
And love just seems like it should be so easy. And I don't know if I talked to you about this before, but honestly, I don't practice, well, I shouldn't say that. Unconditional love is a challenge for me.
Mhm.
And I'm being 100% transparent. There's conditions
Mm.
on my love. You come at
Yeah.
me crazy, you talking to me crazy, you hitting on me, you disrespecting me, all that, my gauge changes. I won't hurt you, I won't harm you, but to give you that thing of abundance that is pure agape love, that's as pure as water and as free as the air and as loving as a newborn child, just to give that to someone that is constantly berating and belittling you, uh you know again, you don't have to have a front row seat in my life, but just to for me to say, I can say I care for you. I don't hate you. Hate is a very strong word too, but just that love. Gail, you're asking a lot. That takes
Well,
a lot.
indeed, and and that's one of the reasons why I say the first place that you need to demonstrate that love is with yourself,
Mm-hmm.
because if connection to another person harms and damages you, then then you need to not be connected to that person. It does not mean that you negate the fact that they have a piece of sacredness inside them and they deserve space and place. But you don't have to be the person who provides space and place for that person. None of us can take in and take on every person in the world with all of their problems and all of whatever. That love does not need to be up close and personal.
Okay. Then again,
That's the difference.
it's a frequency, and
It's
it
a frequency.
and as it goes out and it reverberates, but what you give is what you get. Now, maybe you can help me with this situation. Okay, I just disbanded a 45-year friendship because I felt disrespected. and I did not feel that the love was reciprocal.
Mhm.
Um, I'm a Leo, so loyalty is at the top of my list.
Mhm.
You know, yes, I do have high expectations for people that are in my immediate circle. Yes, I do have strong boundaries. Yes, I am a woman of principle. Um, and I felt like I was being violated. You know,
Okay.
it's okay on their side when they're doing whatever they're doing. But then when I counteract or I need you, when I need you there for me, I don't need your money and your things, but when I need your heart and your compassion and you treat me like a wet rag, it's hard.
Right.
And
Right. So what I say, and I came on this understanding when I was exiting a partnered relationship.
mm,
And what I understood for myself was that the fact of my love and care for her was still there, but the shape and the space of how that love and care played out in my life was now different. And that I could be caring about her well-being from a respectful distance where what was going on in her life didn't live in my house.
okay, now let's bring in another element, expectations. Because yes, I did clearly have an expectation of this individual that was
Mhm.
unyielding. I just knew ride or die. If I needed a kidney, you had one, you were going to give it to me. But then I reflected back on years of disappointments, other disappointments that had happened. And I was seeing that this was a pattern. And I'm saying to myself, April, the only person that you should set expectations for is yourself.
Mm.
Because folks are, flaky. they
Well, and
they'll
yeah,
come in and out. But again, what I'm expecting from a level of friendship, maybe that's not something that they can deliver. Maybe that's not something that they want. And I'm putting them in a position that ultimately hurt me because I
mm,
feel bad about this. I'm devastated by it. But in another
sure.
way, I'm relieved. So when you're talking this language of love and being heart centered, that doesn't mean that your heart is not going to break.
Oh, no. In fact, when you show your heart more purely, it is easier for the folks who would hurt it to see it and to know where to aim.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you which is why, that principle of owning our own lives with 100% responsibility
Mm-hmm.
is so important, because truly the only person we can control is ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We can navigate and negotiate. We can exchange. We can try to persuade or influence. But the only person we have control over is ourselves. So I can adjust my expectations. I can lengthen my distance and put somebody at arm's length and push them away. I can choose to love that person in the abstract rather than in the concrete and present. Um, I can direct my attention and fill my space more with people who are in a reciprocal relationship with me. Because, what I'm doing is making the choice not to empty the well of my loving
Mm-hmm.
into a place where it is not getting filled back up.
I know it's draining. I have another friend. Yeah, I got a lot of friends. But we were at an event, and I tell you, she just sucked the oxygen right out of the room with the negativity towards herself. I don't like this. I don't like the way I look. I don't like this. And I told her, I said, when you're with me, you got to speak love language. So I gave her an assignment. to put 10 stickies on a mirror that she will see every day. And all she needs to put on there is I am. But that I am, finish the sentence. I am love, I am positive, I am beautiful, I'm rich, yeah, whatever those things are. And then the next week, go back every day and read those to yourself. You have to ingrain that. It's planting not a seed. You want to plant an orchard. You want to bring abundance. You want to have a harvest. And so many people think small and they play small. And they do themselves such a disservice.
Yes.
Because there's so much out there. You know, we don't want to talk politics, but they're infighting among themselves. So there is something that's going on in that whole environment that's not conducive to us, of course, as the citizens of the United States. But even there's an air of evilness that they don't even get along and have a general consensus against one another.
Yeah.
It happens in families.
It does. It does. And I think, what I know about the law of attraction is that energy flows where attention is directed. And so one of the things I hope by creating a movement that focuses on love more is that more love energy gets created and flows and penetrates the atmosphere so that it grows. Think how your life would be different if instead of the morning newscast being the one token positive story in the midst of all the ick and the pain and the ugliness, there was one story of pain or distress in amongst a newscast of all the wonderful ways that people had been there for each other and all the beauty of the world. How different would you feel starting your day if that was the newscast that was brought to you?
Well,
Now,
that's why I don't watch the news.
Exactly. And I'm not telling you that we can flip a switch and make this happen, even inside ourselves. It's a work in progress and it takes time. And, we all still have those old triggers and those old habits and patterns. And, sometimes when that trigger gets tripped, that, if somebody hits you in a really vulnerable spot, it's easy for that trigger to get tripped and want to lash out. Okay. It takes intention.
So we talked about love, but we have to talk about forgiveness. But also, I want to get into you a little bit because you've always been this real smooth operator. Okay. The voice inflection, the message, everything. I get goose pimples when I hear you speak. But did you have a revelation? Did you have a new epiphany? What caused you to really start a movement, a campaign? These aren't easy. And
no.
Give us one or two steps.
Okay.
Get us involved and get us engaged.
Okay. So I spent most of my professional career being what I would call the well-trusted number two. I was the person who stood behind the person on the stage and fed them the words and fed them the content and gave them the message, or I went out and spoke on their behalf with their message. But the truth of what was in me, it wasn't that and I only spoke for people whose message I was aligned with. I mean, I didn't go out and speak for people I didn't agree with, but still it was their message in their words. And at a point in my professional career, I was standing up to give a speech to a room full of attendees at a conference. And I opened my mouth to speak and no words came out. I couldn't catch my breath to get enough air to get speech out of my mouth. And I pulled my boss up to the podium and walked off the podium as I was struggling to breathe and collapsed. And we found out that my diaphragm, at this point, we were only looking at one side of my diaphragm, but found out that my diaphragm was paralyzed. And that was what was making it hard for me to breathe. And at that point, they didn't know why. They didn't know if anything would make it better. I went through every medical test you could imagine and then some. And I had surgery for another medical problem, and they discovered that the second side of my diaphragm was paralyzed. And there I was, living life at the end of an oxygen hose with a concentrator, not sure if I could work again, and not sure if the condition I was in was as good as my life was going to be or as bad as it was going to get. Was I going to get better, or was I on the decline? And in my contemplation and my spiritual work in that time, I realized that I had something inside me that needed to be said to the world, that wasn't the voice of those other people, but was my own voice. And that was about language is a sacred gift and we need to use it for good. And I did what many people in many tough situations do. I struck a bargain with my higher being and said, if I can have the breath to speak, I'm going to speak the words you put inside me.
Right. That's right.
And I realized, first I kind of thought, well, I can do it at a level of remove, or I can do it whatever. And then I went to I lost 80 pounds of weight to take the pressure off my diaphragm and learned to use some of the ancillary muscles to help me breathe. But we never have gotten full function back in my diaphragm, but I recovered to the level that I could move through the world, and I only need oxygen at night and not to function day to day. And, I still have limitations, to be sure, but, I'm able to be functional. And I went to this retreat and we did an exercise. Interestingly, you talked about the Post-its with I am, and that was the exercise at this conference. And, I went down filling out the I'm a speaker, I'm an author, and at that point I was doing copy, message development, message mentoring kind of stuff. And I did all that. And the last thing I wrote down was, I am the heart's voice. And I went, whoa, and where did that come from? And that did not come from my head. That came from that source channel. And I thought, what does this mean? And so when I retired from my 9-to-5 job and was doing contract copywriting and all of that, this thing was sitting in me. I thought, what does that mean? What is it about being the heart's voice? And it became clear to me. It is the fact that I am so talented with words and so able to use words in powerful and constructive ways made me the person that needed to go out into the world and say, hey, world, language is a sacred gift from source. It's the thing that makes human beings
different from
able and different than other creations. It is powerful, and we need to use it for good. We need to use it for the benefit of ourselves, each other, and the planet. And we're not doing a very good job. And the heart's voice, that voice of sacred truth in each of us, that little piece, I talk about each of us having a little piece of sacred truth that's whispered into us as we're created. And we're meant to speak that piece of sacred truth out into the world so that we can unify it all again and grow into that one great unity, which is love.
Well,
And then,
instead of being a speaker, you should be elevated to a philosopher because
thank you.
you are speaking truth, and you're speaking from a thought perspective, thought
Yeah,
motivate
yeah,
intention.
yeah,
Understand your intentions. Um, I
yeah.
think
And so,
one
I just,
word is woke. Are you awakened? Are you,
yeah, yeah. And, I knew when I examined, I thought, I have been, I literally have been gifted enough air to speak.
mm, mm, mm.
And when I have enough air to speak, I best be speaking the things that are important, the things that are true, and the things that will bring healing to the world. And so that's why I've started this movement, why I invite people to join me in the movement. And all it takes is your intentional commitment to use language and listening for good. Because I know that when we create a critical mass of people who vibrate at the frequency that will drown out the negativity and the pain, we begin to heal. We begin to heal the world. We begin to heal ourselves and each other. And so the first dialogue has to be inside us. We need to speak love to ourselves and inside ourselves. We need to talk about ourselves and to ourselves in the most loving of ways, the most affirming of ways. And sometimes that means telling the truth about things that need to be tuned up, but telling the truth in love.
Tell the truth and shame the devil.
Yeah, but telling the truth in love.
Okay, now I'm a numbers girl. You're a businesswoman. What's the matrix on this? How are we going to measure and monitor the results? How are we going to know if we're impactful, influential, and insightful?
Well, and that I'm still working on that, April, to be very honest with you. I have a Facebook community that I'm growing that now has a couple of hundred members, and I'm hoping to continue to grow that Facebook community, make that the hub of activity, and to get people literally to begin both to speak that way and to notice when it's speaking.
Right.
And so my goal is to have 1,000 people who are part of the Facebook community, and presume that each of those people then has 100 people who they serve as the good example for in terms of how they use language and listen, and to start monitoring. And I've talked with somebody at the university at Florida State in the communication department, and thinking, what would happen if we did a study of news broadcasts and we started seeing what percentage of news broadcasts lift up positive and loving and caring kinds of things, and then actually campaign to say, let's get a news outlet. Maybe it's only a local news outlet, not tackling the big networks first. But what if I could get my local TV station to commit to doubling the amount of positive, loving, people helping people, positive things for the world coverage in their nightly newscast? Imagine if twice as many.
But I tell people, that is probably why in the Bible, that is one of the commandments, is that, you must love.
Yep.
And it seems so simplistic, but sometimes it's a challenge. And sometimes people use it as a weapon.
Oh, well, and
like the word trust,
Mhm.
I trust you based upon the parameters or the conditions or the expectations that come along with it.
Right. I trust you as long as you stay in my little box.
Right. You stay in your lane, you do what I tell you to do, or you fall in line, then you're gonna be loved. But you don't do that um to a person in your family that's sick. A senior citizen. I love senior citizens. Senior citizen. When you get a new puppy, what do? Love on them. Dog doesn't speak the
Well,
same
right.
language, but it's a love language. And anything that you do in the spirit of love sometimes doesn't require you to even be verbal.
Exactly.
There's a lot of times that
Exactly.
I can show I feel the love from you right now. We're not, in the same
We're
room.
not in the same room. Right.
Yeah, we're not in the same room. Or, you can just sit in silence.
Hmm.
Silence is very, very powerful. Just like you said, when you were in that state of flux and your diaphragm was impacted, but you promised and you made a promise that if I am allowed to get beyond this, that I will do good.
Hmm.
That wasn't maybe an outward, but every fiber in your being was radiating at that frequency. So, Brains, you gotta you gotta figure out what you want, and you gotta figure out what's important to you. Really, what's important to you. Until you do that, and until you figure out how to be kind and loving to yourself, it's going to be a challenge. I can't say that because I'm not a Debbie Downer. It's going to be a challenge to be able to be a part of this movement because this isn't for chumps. These are for seriously committed people that are ready to walk among the angels, to tread lightly. The Chinese tell you all the time, walk as if you were, your feet never touch the ground. As if
Right.
you're floating.
But because we create this movement in love, we're not judging one another and not creating one another. And the first
Let me
imp-
stop you right there because when you say judgment, that's another one of my big $25 words. Because judgment is not always negative, but judgment is also a way to establish boundaries based upon previous conditions, previous
Mhm.
situations. So you got to be careful with that. You've got to, again, you've got to pause, you got to breathe, you got to think about it, maybe write it down, maybe call Gail.
Yeah, I think there's a difference between assessing and observing
Mhm.
and judging and meting out punishment
Okay.
or, you know, and I guess that was the context I was using in judging. Like, you know, it's not, you don't come into the Heart's Voice movement and say, well, do you get an A in Heart Voice or an F in Heart Voice? You come in and you say, I'm committed. And I get, we're all beginners. And I promise you, every single thought that flits through my mind and every single word that almost comes to my lips
Mhm.
is not always perfectly loving. It's not always.
Not you. I don't believe that. I don't believe it. I think everything
Oh,
comes
well,
out of
you'd be
those.
surprised.
I'd
You'd
be
be
surprised.
surprised.
Those two lips, I think everything comes out of that tastes like butterscotch.
Well, most of what comes out does, but maybe not most of what comes up behind those lips.
Right.
And the
Gotta
person,
process it. And we're still human. We're still human.
and the target of sometimes of my most negative thought is myself.
Mm.
I am harder on me than I am on anybody else. And it has taken me a long time. It took me being in that condition and not knowing if I was sticking around on this earth or on the decline
Mm.
and wondering what my value and worth was. It took that experience for me to say, wait a minute, wait a minute. And, it came from the fact that I had internalized, I was, I was the girl who, if 99 people said you did a good job and the 100th person said you didn't do a good job, I only heard the 100th person. I only heard that negative kind of thing. I took that in and made that truth.
Right.
And
And you
so,
have to be careful of again, what you say to yourself, because that is
absolutely.
going to spill out into other things. In closing, Gail, what do you want your legacy to be?
I want my legacy to be that language and listening is used to unite people in love. And that during my lifetime and as a result of my work, that the amount of time that that happens has grown. If there is more love language and more loving listening in the world when I leave it than when I have been here, I will have succeeded.
Well, you have, and you are a shining star. Please tell my brains how to join your Facebook group to get involved in the mission and the cause. Have you created a pledge?
I am working on a pledge. It will,
Okay, well, get a pledge so that we can say it and we can recite it,
okay,
so that we can use it as a mantra. That we can have a visual to say, you know what, this is something that I've committed to, that I'm going to do it. Maybe we get some cool people to put some music behind it and make it an anthem. I'm all about a movement. Okay, I'm a community organizer, originally from Los Angeles. I know how to motivate and shake people. So I am committed, and whatever it is that you need for me to do from this platform to help you into the interview. But again, tell my brains how to get in contact with you.
okay. So in Facebook, there in Facebook groups, look for the Heart's Voice movement and join us there and be part of the movement. And in the meantime, know that speaking from the heart is an act of courage, and listening with the heart is an act of love. So, wishing you courage and love.
No more could be said, brains. Thank you so much, Gail Dixon, for being back here. You are always welcome. You are always insightful, inspirational, clear, concise, and radiate love. Brains, love on us. Go join the group and like, love, share, and subscribe. Like,
Right.
love, share, and subscribe. Okay,
All
we're trying
right.
to raise your frequency every which way. We're gonna cut you every which way but loose because we love you.
All
Thank you.
right. Thanks so much, April.
All right, baby. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye.